Gabe Hurrish is with us today. He is a native of the Diocese of La Crosse, a native son. He is a Maryknoll missioner, and he has done a marvelous job. He started when he was starting to work at the Peace Village. He started a newsletter that was so wonderful because, we're a long, long ways away from South Sudan. And when Gabe started this newsletter, I felt like we were so connected again. He would tell stories and he'd give updates about what was happening. And we were so grateful. And I sent those newsletters on to Rochelle and Sister Rita May. And it's just been a wonderful way for us to stay connected. So Gabe is on leave right now. He will be returning to Africa and to South Sudan, but we are so grateful that he could come and give us an update and something about his life at the Holy Trinity Peace Village in South Sudan. Please welcome Gabe Hurrish.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have to stand right here? There's a camera or something? Okay. But they can see the screen at the same time, see me. Okay. All right. I'm not used to all this technology stuff. My name is Gabe Hurrish. I come from Stevens Point, Wisconsin, La Crosse Diocese. St. Bartholomew's is a small country parish. And I actually used to work for St. Stephen's Religious Ed, so I know some of the people in the diocese here. I've worked with them, Chris Karstens and Ann Langford and some of the others. So I'm with Maryknoll Lay Missioners. I'm on my 6th year. I've been in South Sudan the whole time. So Africa pictures on the wall there. Okay, so you can see the Sudan used to be. Okay, so as you can see, Sudan used to be one big country, biggest country in South Africa. Now it's divided. Now, this PowerPoint was made for a general audience. So I'm just going to fast forward through some pictures because I was doing this for mission appeals. So these are all just pictures from the other places that I was at in South Sudan. And I'm going to get to here on Peace Village here sometime. I was in Juba for a year, COVID, and then this is the landscape that you would see in South Sudan. So villages, very simple, and those are called Toposa, T-O-P-O-S-A, Toposa people. They are as traditional as you can find in the world, but they're changing. And I just wrote an article. You may have gotten the article on economic development. It's changing rapidly. So we lived in this area. That would be the rainy season right there. And if you can see those trees coming through here, that's the river. That's the Quran River. So the Toposa people, very traditional, very natural, and slowly they're changing. You can see the women in the middle wearing the modern cloths, but they all have these tattoos on their bodies as a form of beauty. So here's the village. Here's where we live. So this right here is actually the chapel. That's the chapel. I lived right there in that little tukul. Staff all live over here. This is where all the guests live. And Bishop's house would be like right there in the bush. So the primary school is right here. There's now a church being built over here. And over here is where the nursery, as I understand, you're going to be funding a latrine at a nursery. It'll be right on this side. Now, there's another part of the program, which is called Matara, which is 5 miles away. So sometimes the walk or the drive is not easy. Okay, so this just shows you some of the scenery and some of the problems we have to deal with. The Quran River is very temperamental, and it actually buried one of the bridges from long ago. It's no longer being able to be used. This is the problem, transportation. Every day every week, every month, and it's a problem. So you can see that we always have to have tractors, and it's very difficult on the vehicles. They don't last long. They break down. So here is the compound. The pink building in the middle is sort of like a gathering meeting room. And then all the other buildings are guest rooms or staff stay there. And this is my tuco, very simple. And it was enough for me. Just another view. And I have only one water source. So that's right outside my tuco, and everybody comes to collect water there. And then we shared latrines in the back. You can just barely see them. So it was a simple life. So we do have power and we do have internet. You can see the internet thing here. But the solar batteries are getting bad. And when the generator doesn't have fuel, then we go without sometimes. So that's the latrines and the showers there. And then this is me with Bishop. So as Rochelle said, Bishop was very active until just a few years ago. He's going to be 87, I think, May. And this was actually his birthday last year. He was in Nairobi. 2 years ago, he was in Nairobi. And he's now having difficulty walking. He's having, as many of you understand, and he's having difficulty with blood pressure and old age. And so he's, as I understand right now, he's in Nairobi getting a checkup again. Okay. So these are just pictures of some of the people and some of the children. You can see that they're very traditional, and the kids are dressed up here maybe for church. But you can see this girl in the back carrying that water on her head. That's about 40 pounds. And a small child like that can carry that with no problem at all. Yeah. So two of my colleagues here. This is the one in charge of peace. This is the one in charge of the compound. And then these ladies were on the bridge. Can't really see that. Oh, just kids. Kids love to come to me because I give them candy all the time. We have problems with lizards. There's monitor lizard, there's snakes, there's scorpions, all those things. They get into the chickens. So this would be the main road from the Quran Peace Village to one of the other villages. So this is what the vehicles have to make their own roads. This is at the health clinic where the sisters sponsored a latrine. And you can see that they cook their own food right outside of the latrine there. I mean, outside of the health clinic. So this is just men gathering at their village. One of the things I did was I would go into the villages and interview the elders. What I was trying to do was to capture their culture on paper so that they wouldn't lose it. Maybe 100 years from now, somebody could read that and say, oh, that's what it was for my ancestors. They weren't keeping a record of their own history. So I was trying to do that. They had to use translators all the time. And that's not easy because there are words that Toposa don't have. So sometimes I would have to ask the question 5 different ways in order to get them to understand what it was I was looking for. So it took a long time sometimes, but I enjoyed the people. I just enjoyed sitting with them and having time. One of the problems there is violence. South Sudan is a very violent country, and AK-47s are everywhere. Just kids have them and men have them, not women though. Okay, so the bridge is there, and it was damaged severely during the floods. And these women are actually carrying fencing material. They'll make fences with that material right there. Women do all the work. Women build the houses, they get the fences, they go fetch water, they clean the food, they kill the cow, they skin the cow, they cook the cow, they clean up. And so they are the workhorses of this culture. Then we fixed up the bridge, and it's still, on this picture, it's still in process, but it's done now. It's metal. So it's a very important link between the north and south of the river. And when I went to interview people, a lot of times I wanted to know what was it like before Quran Peace Village. But I found that if I said, what was it like before the bridge? They understood that question. They knew. But if I said before the villages, they weren't really sure what I was asking. So I used the bridge as a timeline. We never had a grocery store or anything. They bring it to us. So this is our groceries. So on the right, the chickens they're bringing. In the middle, they're bringing cooking firewood. And on the left, that's actually bush antelope that they killed with those AK-47s. So they bring this bush food to us. So we always see people on the compound bringing us food. Okay, we'll skip that. Now, sisters, these are a little bit mixed up, but we'll just work with that. This is the Quran nursery. This is the old building that they really don't use anymore. Where I understand they're going to build a latrine is behind that building there. They have like a compound. So I think eventually this will have to come down, but that it's going to be built in this compound. I have a couple other pictures of the nursery. So here is the plaque that was painted, but the paint is very poor. And when the rains came, it washed the sign off. So it says funded by Franciscan Sisters FSPA, and that would be this latrine. This is what was funded by the sisters at the health clinic. So you've got two sides. Both sides have a pit latrine and a shower area. And of course, it's accessible, although we don't have wheelchairs or anything like that. So this is what the sisters built in 2021, I think it was. Yeah. So there's another angle of it. And then what picture do I have there? Oh, that's actually a video, but I don't know how to play the video. I don't know if I can play that. No, okay. This is behind that building I was talking. So they're going to put that latrine somewhere here. They have like an orchard, and then you can see the banana plants, the papayas, and they have lemon trees, lime trees, and guava. So they do have food there for the kids then. And then that's it. So I'm just going to go back to here. Okay, so this is the compound. Well, maybe I should go all the way back. So there we are. So there's the village. So what kind of questions would you have? Or what kind of comments? What kind of things would you want to know? So I was out there for 2.5 years. I was the only non-African for maybe 150 miles in any direction. And that has advantages and disadvantages. There was no other one to really talk to. Most of the people will speak English, but there was also, Toposa was heavily used, of course, and the Juba Arabic, which is the language of South Sudan, and then Kiswahili, and then a dozen mother tongues would be used out there. So I myself never learned the Toposa, and so I always had translators with me when I went out to the villages. My job there, as Rochelle said, was to produce a newsletter. And then also I documented all these things. They didn't have a lot of pictures, or they had them, but they had them on their cell phone and they would just go away with their cell phone. So I created an archive, which is, the bishop asked me to do that. I created a history of the entire program from 2000 until 2023. And then I created a picture history. So all of that is now in the hands of the program. After 2.5 years, I realized that my age and my health is not really made for those isolated places. So I decided to move out. I had a problem with eyes and teeth and all these other things. So I will now be in another village, parish, about 8 hours south of Quran Peace Village, very near to where the main market is, Capueta. And I'll be working with Nigerian priests and Ugandan sisters. So that's where I'll be going when I head back. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. In South Sudan, everybody asks what's the population, and nobody really knows for sure. What they have no statistics. They'll give you numbers, but that's not accurate. So they say 12 million people in the whole country, and a third of them are either in the IDP camps or out of the country as refugees. So you can imagine a third of your people just having to leave their traditional lands because of the violence, because of the flooding, and other problems. So in this area, I think they say about 40 to 50,000 in this area. Now, an interesting thing happened. There was a village right where you see the buildings now, and that village actually moved up here to the river, and then Bishop's group, when they first came, started living here. But it turned out that this floods a lot. So these people actually moved up in this area just to the left here. The road is here. This is the road running past. And they started a market. So there's first market ever in that area. So for myself, it was good. They sell spaghetti and tomato paste. So I could have spaghetti and tomato paste instead of beans and rice every single day. Also, there's fish in the river, but it's like a mud fish. It's not a white fish. The meat is really rich in minerals. And then they would kill animals like antelopes and things like that and bring them to us, and we'd buy those for them. Toposa are now starting to save money. They never did that before. They're starting to buy cell phones. They understand the use of them now. They're starting to put their girls in school, which they never did before, and keep them there. Still problems, still lots of problems. They are starting to send their boys to school, which you didn't see a lot of before. They are starting to grow vegetables that they never grew before. Now, a lot of them they grow, like eggplant, they grow and just sell it to the people here because they don't eat it, but they know that we will buy it. And they have chickens, and they bring the eggs. Eggs are like gold to get eggs. And then they are raising, they're planting maize, which is this past year we had a very good maize crop until the drought came, and then they lost all the maize. But sorghum will completely die, and all it needs is 2 rains, and that comes right back. A perfect sorghum. So they got a lot of sorghum this year, but they lost the maize crop. They're also planting a few things like root crops, cassava and taro and some of those other things. So, but you can see it is dry even in the rainy season. Unless you're near that river, you don't get any growth or anything. Most of those trees were planted from 2000 until now. So, any other questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah, okay. So the question of water and people leaving their traditional lands, this is true. It's a unique country in that it's experiencing excessive floods and excessive drought. It just depends on the place you are in the country, and it's strange. So the area I'm in is more dry. Now we had record floods 2 years ago, incredible floods. In fact, you wouldn't believe that you can see here, this is the main road, and we can't go anymore on the road because the water was so high. But here's the river when it's low, and here the cattle can cross. But when this happened, it ruined the, let me see here if I can get, it ruined the bridge. So we had to rebuild the bridge. I'm not sure. Yeah, you can see here that the bridge is all kind of destroyed at this moment. I can't remember if I had another picture there or not. But yeah, that's the problem with South. Oh, there's the bridge destroyed. So these planks were all just broken up and everything. So now what we had to do is we welded metal down, and it's a very solid bridge now. But we had a footbridge, and that's gone. That's completely gone. But there's water in the ground. Yes, you're right. The problem is it costs about $27,000 to drill an average borehole and put a hand pump on it. So $27,000 to me is not very much, but it's hard to get that money. And usually when the truck would come out, you'd want to drill 10 holes. You know, if it comes all the way out there, you'd want to try to get as many holes as you could. So we do have a number of holes around this area because of the Peace Village. But now the maintenance becomes a problem. Who's going to maintain them because they break easily? So our staff are constantly fixing those things, and some of them are quite isolated. But certainly water is a major problem for Toposa. Yeah. So that was one of the things the village was working on. Now in the areas where it's flooding, ironically, they can't plant because it's flooded. So those people leave that area and go to another area. Well, now they're infringing upon other people's area, and now you have conflicts. So thank God for Kenya and Uganda. They host something like 2 million South Sudanese, which is incredibly generous, very, very generous. So, yeah, refugees outside the country. Mm-hmm. Oh.
You said the women do everything. What do the men do?
Yeah, what do the men do? I asked that question. They said, "Oh, we men have a very, very important role to play. We make decisions." Oh, yeah, that's hard work. That's really hard work. You will rarely see a Toposa man doing any kind of work like this. However, in agriculture, one of the things I was documenting was there are more and more men in the fields. Used to be no men would be in the fields. So that's a good thing. There's a little mind change there. But it'll take a long time. Now, something happened, and I wrote a story on a young fellow named Velio. Velio started in grade 1 at this village, and he went through the whole system all the way through high school. Bishop sent him to nursing school. He became a nurse, and he's right back at the health institute, the health center, helping his own people. I thought that was an absolutely perfect thing because that's what you want. He's Toposa, he's from that area, and so now he told me, I'm going to make sure all my family go to school. His father wasn't in favor when he went. He had to pay his own way. But now he's going to make sure everyone else gets in, including girls. So there's a mind change there. There's an attitude change. We start with 1. We hope we get 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Jesus only started with 12. So multiplied from there. So let us always keep hope that it will happen. What I see is men sitting around a lot. And one day I left the village early in the morning, and I walked all the way to the health clinic, which is 5 miles. I did all my work out there, and then I walked back a couple hours later. So you're looking, I got back around 1 o'clock. I left around 6, I got back around 1. Those same men who were sitting on those logs were still there. And I said, what'd you guys do all day? Oh, we've just been talking. And in the meantime, the women have been doing all kinds of work and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a man's world, definitely. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
So this is Roseanne again. And when Mark and I were at the Peace Village in 2013, we had the choice. You could fly from Jubao to the Peace Village in about an hour and a half, I think, or it was a 5-day trip if you went by vehicle. And you had to bring at least 2 spare tires because there's lots of flat tires on the way. So anyway, we flew, and when we arrived, Bishop Taban met us at this little rustic airstrip, and he said, the women cleared all the brush for this airstrip. So just to support what Gabe is saying, the women cleared the brush for this airstrip.
Yeah, it's the women, usually it's the women who are building the bridge areas, the gabions, clearing rocks, bringing rocks in. For the latrine that was built, the women brought in all the sand and the rocks. Men didn't do any of that. In fact, when we were fixing the bridge, we had a huge backfill that we had to do. And the women were bringing these rocks, and it was just a matter of taking them from they dumped them from the truck, and now they were throwing them over here. And they were just carrying them back and forth, back and forth. And the men were all lined up on the bridge just watching. So I took my shirt off, and the women started razzing me. Hey, foreigner, hey, what work do you do? You can't do this. You're too weak. I said, I'll show you. So I took off my shirt, but I went and started carrying rocks, not to show those women something. I was trying to show the men something. But they laugh at you thinking you're weak. Yeah, but it's a seed. You're planting a seed. And then I say, how can you let your women do all this work? Why don't you side by side? And they laugh, but they will carry that thought with them. And so we try slowly to, but these are the toughest women I've ever met in my life. One woman at a workshop, I was just walking around taking pictures for documentation, and this woman walked past me. She's limping. And I said, oh, what happened to you? And she put up her foot, and on the bottom of her foot was like a 3-inch gash and bleeding like crazy. And I said, oh my God. I said, that looks like that hurts. She just limped over to the charcoal fire. She picked up a red hot coal with her hands. That alone impressed me. She then took that red hot coal and just right on that wound. And I just cringed. And she cringed, of course, too. And then she just threw that back on the fire and walked back over to the workshop and sat down and attended the workshop. I said, wow, is one tough lady. So they were the toughest people I've ever met. These women look you right in the face and they point right at you. And if they don't like something, they let you know. But unfortunately, the culture is they do all the work. Yeah, that's true.
Stealing cattle.
Do they still have trouble with stealing cattle? Yes. That's a nationwide problem, and it's creating major problems. But now in Peace Village, because of the intervention program of the Peace Village, it has mitigated, meaning it has lowered a lot. One of the statistics I was keeping was cattle raids. How many reported cattle raids do we have? And we've seen a drop over the past couple of years. It'll get where you think it's all peaceful, and all of a sudden they'll have 2 or 3 cattle raids, and you don't know where that's coming from. The problem is young men aged 16 to 30. Those are the problem. The elder men don't want to do cattle raids anymore. The younger kids don't have anything to do with that, and the women don't ever want to carry a gun. So it's that age group. And so we're working with that age group, but it's really hard because it's embedded in their mentality that this is what we do. We go to the other village and we steal their cows. And so I saw a lot of gunshot wounds in the health clinic. And a lot of these guys need to have a hand or a leg amputated, but they won't do it. So they probably end up dying from infection. But we had some very tragic situations where young people died, and mother is distraught because when she loses her husband, everything is taken away from her. So suddenly she has 2 or 3 kids and she's on her own. And so we tried to help them in some ways, but it's not easy. So the cattle running is still there. It's in their blood. But I would say in this area where the Peace Village has been working, it is much reduced. And it's like little kids. You got to constantly be pulling them apart from fighting. And so that's what we were constantly doing. Yeah. Is part of that to get the bride price? Well, yeah, I suppose it is. The more cows you have, the better off you are. No matter how many you have, you never have enough. This is what I understand. And yeah, a young girl who is tall, strong, she could bring in 50 cows. So these men are looking at cows. And Bishop may have told you that there are problems in the primary school. Sometimes the men show up right during the class and just grab that girl and say, "You're coming home, you're getting married." And there's been some, we try to stop that, but it gets very tense very quickly. So right now, I have a family member who is sponsoring a young girl in the high school. She is not a student at all. She just can't get it. She's not very good. She's failing. But we're keeping her in the school, even though she's failing, because it'll give her 3 or 4 more years before she'll be out, and then they'll marry her. As long as she stays in the school, they won't touch her. So we're just trying to put off the marriage for a few more years for her. Poor thing. She knows that's what's going to happen to her. So yeah, they're looking for cows all the time. Yeah, percentages in the school, the girls, it's normally around 20 to 28% girls, both in the high school and in the primary. In the nursery, no problem, because they're just kids, so they'll just send all their kids. And one of the reasons you have to remember they send their children to school is because they get fed 3 times a day. And even though it might be a very bland diet and everything, they only get 1 meal a day if they're in the village. So the parents will send them to the school where their kid will be fed because it's a boarding school. And then at home, they're saving that food for the men. And I've seen where the men have just eaten everything and let the women and children have nothing at the end of a meal. Another interesting thing is Toposa women do not eat in the sight of men. So one time when I very first there, we had a meal, and you know, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I look around, I notice there's no women around. Where'd all the women go? They went around the building, and they're eating on the other side of the building. And of course, if I go there, they just think I'm strange. They don't see the message. But you know, we try to get the women to speak up. We try to get the women to uh, be able to have a voice, and they've had some success there. They've had some success. There's some pretty tough women in the communities there. You know. Okay, who the children that go to the school, where are they from? At the moment, a number of the children, both in the primary and the secondary, are from outside the Toposa land area. They bring them in on lorries. They have to bring them in from Capueta. There's even a couple from Juba there. I don't know how they get these connections, but the nursery is 100% local kids, and they're great. You know, they just full of energy, and they learn everything. I have that video, but we can't get it to play. I don't know the percentages, but they're trying to increase the local attendance level. They're trying, because this logistics of going and getting them and coming back is really difficult. It's very, very difficult. So I know that was always a problem. So maybe half and half at the moment. But in the high school, I think only Hannah and Emmanuel, I think, are the only 2 from the local area. All the rest are brought in, 80 students. Maybe only 2 are from the local area there. How are they brought in? Well, we have dump trucks, which what we would call dump trucks, but they're lorries, big trucks that you just pack the kids on the back. Think of a dump truck here in our culture and just put like 70 kids on the back of that truck, and they're standing the whole way in the hot sun, 14 hours, and sometimes the truck breaks down, so it could be 2 or 3 days, no food, no water, and that's how they're doing it. And it's not easy. That's why I say it's really difficult. But kids are kids, man. They're tough, and it doesn't seem to faze them. But I always get a seat in the front next to the driver, so I'm spoiled. But everybody else in the back, they're jammed in there, and they're bringing their backpacks. They're bringing little things. They're bringing mattresses, mosquito nets, things like this. So that truck is packed, jam packed. Yeah, and they do this 4 times a year. Yeah, so it's not easy. It's not easy at all. Yeah, but the nursery, they're all from local. So we're hoping the nursery starts to feed into the 1st grade, the 2nd grade, the 3rd grade, and then eventually more and more local kids will be there. There are a number of kids who walk. In fact, there was a group of kids who almost every day I would meet them because I go for my walk in the morning. They're coming to the nursery, and they would just run from 200 yards away to greet the foreigner. They wanted to use their English. How are you? How are you? So I'm the only one they would use their English with. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I say the children that come into the boarding school stay all week. How do you take care of the laundry of that many children?
These are practical questions. Yes, good questions. Okay, so it's both the high school and the primary school are boarding, so the kids live right there. They have like a room like not even this big. They would have a room about as big from here to there, and they would have maybe 70 kids sleeping in there on bunk beds and stuff, and many of them sleep on the floor. But you have to remember, they think that's luxury because they come from the bush where they sleep on the ground, snakes, scorpions, all that. So this is luxury to them. And it's also luxury because they don't have to do work. They're just in the school studying. So the girls are kept separately from the boys. And if you go in the boys' dormitory, it smells. They don't wash their clothes as often as they should, whereas the girls are washing their clothes all the time. So they get their water from various sources, from a hand pump. They might go to the river. We have water tanks, and if there's enough water, they can use the water tanks that come draining into the spigots. But when there's no water, yeah, then they can't wash their clothes. So the children have to not only take care of themselves, they have to take care of the school, clean it, keep it in an organized way. They have to go and get the firewood every day. They have to, when they come to school, they have to bring some food and put it in a general collection, and they use that throughout the term. So there's 3 terms. So they will come for, let's say, 3 months, and then they go home for a couple of weeks, and then they come again for 3 months, and then they go home. Their big break is December, January. That's their big break. 2 months they get a break. Yeah. So a little bit different from ours. We start in September. We go till June. They were doing that, but they just recently changed to January to December schedule now. So they would start probably late February, and they would end sometime in December with exams. Yeah. Is a technical school operating? Yes and no. There are students there. They are helping with the construction. They helped on the construction of the latrine that the sisters funded. But as far as classes go, there are sporadic classes there. And one of the teachers recently moved on, so there's only 2 there now. Now the brothers, I should mention, there's no priest There's no bishop, there's no priest. There's no bishop, there's no priest. And so for a year and a half, we didn't have sacraments. But the brothers are St. Martin de Porres from Uganda. There were two, and now there's four. There used to be sisters there, but they left also because bishop was never around and they religious need sacraments. So they ended up leaving. But now the brothers are there, and I left. So I never actually met the new brothers. I only know the other two. So there is we have prayer services, we have communion services, liturgy of the word. We were able to get consecrated hosts out there at the chapel. So yeah, I forgot the question. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. The vocational tech is there. It's working sort of, but I wouldn't say that they would be graduating anybody this year. Yeah, Father Henry Gadudu from Uganda was there until December of 2021. Is that right? 2021, yeah, 21. He left to continue studies and unexpectedly passed away. Here's the problem. Tory diocese, there's 5 dioceses. Sorry, there's 7 dioceses in South Sudan. And just before the Pope came on February, the last diocese was filled, and that was Torit Diocese, which is the diocese that Quran Peace Village is in. So we have a brand new bishop. I've never met him yet. I'll meet him when I go back. But without a bishop, the priests who were supposed to come out didn't come. And so there are actually 3 parishes. Quran Peace Village is not a parish. It is an outpost of another parish that's about 1 hour south. And so somebody was assigned to that parish, but they never came. So we didn't have a priest for the longest time. Yeah, it was tough. Well, tough for me anyway. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, I was going to mention that. Okay. How do you get in and out of Quran Peace Village? There's 2 ways, really. One is by land and one is by air. If you go by air, you're blessed by God. It's a 45-minute flight. You land on the airstrip, they pick you up in a vehicle, boom, you're in your tuko and you're good to go. If you come in by land, you must fly from Juba to Capoeira, spend 1 night, or they pick you up that day. And now it'll be a 6 to 8 hour land trip on a vehicle, dusty, hot, dirty, no rest stops along the way. You just stop on the road and go in the bush. And you would be exhausted after that. It's like a 2-day trip. So that's why anybody who could get on a plane would get on a plane, because it saves you so much time. But those planes are $2,500 round trip, and that's only an hour and a half flight. That's the Mission Aviation Fellowship. They provide a wonderful service, but it is expensive. And so most people would fly from Juba to Capoeira. It's $100, $150, then wait for a vehicle. And it could be a couple of days before a vehicle is able to get out and get there. And then it might be a couple of days before they can head back because they have to buy supplies. So by land, it's tough. I used to say in South Sudan, we don't use the seat belts for safety. We use them to keep you in your seat, because you're bouncing up and down, left and right, forward and backward, just constantly. You know, it's rough. It's very, it was hard on me, I'll tell you. It was hard to go in and out. That's why I got in the village. I never left. I was there for over a year, never left. Okay, what about going to the States? So, yeah, I would fly myself here. I'll fly from central Wisconsin, Wausau, Mosinee. I'll fly from there to Chicago. Then from Chicago, there's many options. But the most recent option I took I flew to Addis Ababa, and then I flew to Juba, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and then I flew to Juba, and then I'll sit in Juba to find out what's going on. Is there going to be a charter plane or no? Can I go to Capoeira? Is there a vehicle? So if they tell me there's no vehicle in Capoeira and there's no charter plane, I stay in Juba because I have friends and I can do other work while I'm there. Bishop has a guest house in Juba, and it's about $15 a night, and it's okay. It's a nice place. And then you fly to Capoeira and you find out the vehicle's not coming, so then you have to stay in a hotel or something. But I know several of the parish priests. These are all Africans. And so I told Father Joseph, I would rather give you the $15 than to stay in a hotel. So he's actually got a room for the bishop. When the bishop comes to visit, he has a room. So I use that room and I pay the parish. And they're very happy to get that money because they don't have money. So instead of staying in hotels, I usually stay with the parish there, with the priests. Yeah. Good old Father Joe. Okay, you have to remember South Sudan is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. So when you sisters send money, make sure it's to the correct bank account and make sure everybody knows and because as you know, Bishop has had some problems in the past. There's always people looking to take that money. The banks have been more or less blacklisted in South Sudan because of poor banking practices. So we always say you can put your money into a bank in South Sudan, but you can't get it out. They don't want to ever give you the dollars. And so this is a problem. So, yeah, the peace. So what they do is they keep their money in Kenya and Uganda. A lot of places do that, but you still might have to come through somehow the banking systems in South Sudan. You know, like the Kenyan bank might be in Juba, but now the government tries to manipulate things and stuff like that. I don't know because I don't have to do that, but I'll tell you a couple things I do know. When the development agencies pay their staff in the fields, you know, all around the country, they buy a $100 ticket round trip, and a person gets on the plane with a backpack. And they fly up there, they get off the plane and go into a van that's waiting for them. They open the backpack and there's like $5,000 in local currency. They count all that money, make sure it's all good, sign the paper. That person now flies back to Juba. They cannot trust anyone else to take that money, and they can't trust the banks to transfer it. So they actually physically carry that money. You'll see like 5 people on the plane with backpacks, and these are commercial planes. And you say, what are they doing? That's what they're doing. They're carrying money. So what's Quran Peace Village does, same thing. They get the money in Juba somehow. I don't know banking systems how they do it, and they bring it out in a backpack or a briefcase or a bag. And one of the first things they do, as soon as they arrive in the village, they disappear right into the finance office, the door, and they'll finance people will be there, and they'll make sure it's in a safe. They got a big safe that's there, and they count that money out, and that's how they get the money there. Yeah, I myself personally, I don't use the bank, so I carry cash. When I go back, I will be carrying cash. And then I distribute that cash to 3 trusted friends in Juba. And then when I need the money, I can go to Juba and get the money. But I never use the banks. It would be too risky. I would feel I'd lose my money. Yeah, so these are good questions. So I think we might be coming close to time here. So I'll hand it back to our hostess.
Well, thank you. And I think a big round of applause for Sister Rita May and Rochelle for setting this up. And to all of you sisters for supporting the Peace Village over these years. As you can hear, it's made an incredible difference. And as Gabe was talking about what the men do and do not do, I couldn't help but think about Bishop Taban, because when Mark and I were at the Peace Village in 2013, there were some people coming from Uganda by land. And in the middle of the night, we hear this commotion. Bishop Taban got up because they had used up their last spare tire, and they always have at least two, right? And it was Bishop Taban who went out with someone else to go and was out the rest of the night to pick those people up. And so he's just a real example for me of someone who, he's out there. He did some of the clearing of that airstrip as well. So I think when you talk about kind of men serving as a model for other men, I've certainly seen that in him. And I think that is making a difference. And when you talk about how many gals are in the school, that is a huge amount compared to what we saw when we were there. And we had one elder woman, Mama Quran, they called her, who she said, "I'm keeping my granddaughter is staying in." Of course, we had a translator too, but my granddaughter is staying in the school. And this was when there might have been 2 or 3 women that were allowed to stay in the school. So I'm thrilled to hear that it's actually grown as far as the percentage of women that are able to stay in the school. So it is happening. And really, when you think about it, 20 years is not a very long time for a huge cultural shift like that to happen. So Gabe, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful for us to have a little feel for life in the Holy Trinity Quran Peace Village. And thank you all so much for hosting this and for continuing to support this wonderful